Hello viewers, welcome to our channel. In today's video, we look at what's driving the big rally in India's paper stocks. Also, before we get into today's video, kindly subscribe to our channel and share it with your friends and family and spread the wings of financial literacy among all. When the pandemic made landfall in 2020, people called up their newspaper providers and said, "Please don't deliver my paper for a few months." They feared coronavirus would stick to paper and infect them. So they stopped reading newspapers. Meanwhile, schools shut down and moved online. Kids didn't need back to school notebooks anymore. They could just scribble down the teacher's instructions on their computer, maybe on Google Docs. Companies turned their back on paper too as digitization accelerated. They stopped mailing hard copies of annual reports to shareholders. They didn't print out long memos for meetings anymore. Essentially, the demand for all kinds of paper plummeted, and the paper industry was shocked. Overnight, large parts of the businesses had evaporated. Then a savior emerged: e commerce. People weren't stepping out of their houses all that much, considering they could order everything they needed on e commerce platforms. And that gave a massive fillip to packing board boxes. But guess what goes into making these boxes? Different kinds of paper, of course. So, amidst all this gloom and doom, there was still hope for the paper industry. But investors weren't fully convinced. While the stock market zoomed, shares of paper companies like JK Paper, West Coast Paper Mills, Tamil Nadu Newsprint didn't rally as much. They were perhaps worried about something else, something related to waste paper. Paper is manufactured primarily in two ways. One method uses wood pulp from trees, and the other uses recycled old paper to create new paper. But India's per capita paper consumption is only 20 to 30 kgs. The West, on the other hand, consumes a staggering 350 kgs per capita. Naturally, that also generates a lot of waste. So, India sources 70% of its waste paper requirement via imports from Europe and the US. But during the pandemic, these countries weren't sourcing a lot of waste paper. For instance, the circulation of old newspapers dropped by 35%, and there was just wasn't enough waste paper to go around. Naturally, waste paper became an expensive commodity. The annual report of one paper company notes that prices rose by nearly 50% during this time. Even freight costs surged thrice due to a shipping container crunch. And to make matters worse, in November 2021, Europe even banned exports of waste paper to India. It was a proper struggle. But 2022 has been different. In fact, it has been rather spectacular. Many paper stocks have shot up by 100% in just the past 8 months. For context, the benchmark BSE Sensex is up by a measly 2%. For starters, the EU lifted its ban on April 1st, and it's getting a lot easier for India's paper manufacturers to source the waste paper now. There is also the fact that offices and schools are up and running again. Kids are scribbling on notebooks, offices are printing thick documents, and e commerce orders continue to boom. All this has led to many paper manufacturers running at 100% capacity with all machines churning. The paper companies have also taken unprecedented price hikes starting from October 21 of the year. For instance, the writing and printing paper prices have hit an all-time high with the retail prices touching 90 rupees per kg, and companies have been able to pass on their increased costs fairly well. There is also one other detail. According to a report by Centrum, the benefits of price hikes may not have fully trickled down to the bottom line yet. In fact, they are expecting a 20 to 25% rise in net sales realization this year. So, if the NSR is ticking upwards, it means companies are convincingly charging a higher price for their paper. And if you look at one of India's biggest paper companies, JK Paper, you will see that they reported one of their highest ever NSR alongside higher volumes. So clearly, this is a win win situation for paper companies. There is a constant increase in both net sales and sales volume growth for quarter 2022. And finally, there's one other thing. Paper companies with backward integration capabilities have done better than others. What do we mean? So, if a company is integrated backwards, it means they have built out the capacity to churn out the raw material themselves, for instance, wood pulp. This in turn reduces their dependency on third parties and they can control their input cost. For JK Paper, their cost per ton has fallen 5% since FY 2019 because they have been able to source most of the raw material locally. Even other companies like West Coast have seen their cost per ton only increase by a mere 3%. Okay, all this is in the present. What about the future, you ask? Well, there are two things that you should know. Firstly, there's a ban on single use plastic imposed a couple of months ago. So, e commerce businesses can't use plastic to line their packaging anymore, and they have been making the switch to paper cushions. Not to forget the renewed demand for all things paper, straws, cups, and bags. Secondly, there is the impending implementation of the National Education Policy. As the curriculum changes, new books will need to be published and old ones will be recycled. There is probably going to be quite a bit of demand for paper from the seemingly unconnected event. Put together, you can see why there is so much optimism surrounding paper stocks. The only question now, however, will this rally sustain? We will let you be the judge of that. If you have liked the video, kindly subscribe to our channel and hit the notification icon bell button for many such videos. Until then, have a great day.